Everybody, I am in Indianapolis this morning. It's actually a beautiful morning, and I'm in the very first neighborhood or community, really, that I lived in whenever I moved to Indianapolis back in the 90s. So I'm on the north side of Indianapolis in a community called Nora, and I'm actually walking right here along the Monon Trail, coming up to 86th Street. So we're gonna talk about Nora just a little bit, and the story of me moving to Indianapolis, maybe just a little bit into that, and then just what Nora is like and what it has to offer. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in a place like Nora in Indianapolis, or Indianapolis in general, or any city or town that surrounds Indianapolis, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. Now we have people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions about Indianapolis, of course, but all the cities and towns that surround Indianapolis as well. So if you have questions at all about anything Indianapolis or regarding anything surrounding Indianapolis, then make sure you reach out any ways you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to the Indy Metro. All right, everybody, again, so I am in Nora, which is actually still Indianapolis. Nora is not really, it was never incorporated as a town, so you're not gonna have a Nora address if you live here. You'll have an Indianapolis address, but this is the first place, the first area that I lived whenever I moved to Indianapolis in the 90s. And when I moved to Indianapolis in the 90s, I had a job in Westfield. And if you watched any of these videos before, but I was a high school science teacher at Westfield High School for a long time, for 16 years or so. And I've been out of Westfield for about 10 years or so at this point. And this is the first place that I lived. And the reason I picked this place was simply that it was in Indianapolis, and I knew I wanted to live in Indianapolis. I didn't at the time want to live in Westfield. Now my opinion would have changed at this point about Westfield, because Westfield was much bigger, there's a lot more happening there. But when I was moving to Indianapolis in the 90s, I was 22 years old, and Westfield was great, but it was incredibly tiny, so small. So I wanted to live in a place that was a little more happening. And the north side of Indianapolis was a good location for me because it was not really a super short commute. It was a 20-ish minute drive, which that's obviously not very long, but I wanted to keep it under 30 minutes, and north side of Indianapolis just made some sense. So found an apartment here, and not a real nice one, just a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom apartment, had a roommate, and it was right here in this area. Now this area, I'm walking along the Monon Trail, it has changed dramatically since the 90s. There's a lot of new construction through here as far as commercial is concerned. There's a Kroger, which is a grocery store right over here off to my right. There's a Whole Foods, there's a Target, post office, you have restaurants, you've got a lot of commercialization right through this particular area. And I'm along 86th Street. In fact, I just crossed it, just back up there to the north, and it's heavily trafficked. There's an awful lot of traffic that goes through there. So if you're going here along the Monon, either from the south or from the north, and you have to cross 86th Street, I mean, it's definitely a job. You got to really watch it. There's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of the commercialization through here, a lot of places to go, a lot of places to eat. But then also you got North Central High School, which is just off to the east of me a little bit. And that's a big high school. There's about 3,800 kids or so that go there. So of course, when school is coming in the morning or when it's out in the afternoon, you get a pretty good number of cars and buses in this particular area. But outside of that, you still have a good amount of traffic just because of everything that's going on here and all that it has. Now, even though my apartment wasn't necessarily very nice, there are certainly some nicer apartments and places to live in Nora than when I lived in initially. Now, that apartment complex is still there, and it's a bit rough, and it's just north of here. But when I moved here, it was just really the location that was the best for me. And once I moved in, got established with the job, then it was time to start exploring a little bit. And in the 90s, the Monon Trail was really just born at that point. And this particular spot on the Monon Trail was really one of the first segments that were laid down. And so at the time I had a mountain bike, and in the evenings or on the weekends, I would go ride around quite a bit. And I would ride over to the grocery store sometimes, I would ride just to get something to eat sometimes. And as I was riding around, this is one of the things that I discovered. And I didn't know it existed. When I moved to Indianapolis, I didn't know anything about the Monon Trail. Now people moving here today, in this day and age, the Monon Trail is huge. It's exceptionally long. It goes all the way to downtown Indianapolis, and it goes north of Westfield at this point, so well over 20 miles long. But it wasn't that way whenever I moved here in the 90s. You could still get pretty far in Indianapolis on it, but you couldn't really go that far north. You could get up into Carmel just a little bit, but that was about it. So this little stretch I found on my mountain bike, and I would ride up and down this thing quite a bit. And I was always just kind of struck at, as I'm kind of walking into it here right now, at how tree-lined this particular segment of the Monon Trail is. Not all of the Monon is exactly like this. As you go through Carmel, it can get a little bit like this, but as you get further and further south on the Monon, it gets a little bit more open. As you get south of Broad Ripple and towards the state fairgrounds, it's a lot more open there. But from Nora down into Broad Ripple, it's like you're walking through a tunnel, essentially, of trees. Exceptionally shaded. It's really, really pretty. So at that time, whenever I lived in this area and doing some exploring, I of course looked at homes and houses in the area just to see what they look like. And even today, being in real estate, of course, I've come into Nora many times. It's always been at least a place that it's kind of one of my favorites. At least I like the area because you get a number of different options. For one, the price ranges, they can vary wildly. So you can get some relatively inexpensive homes in this area, but you can also get homes that are up to $1 million or more in this area too. So it is all over the place, but it's generally extremely established. The trees are very mature, and usually, especially when you get into a home that's a little bit older, maybe not one that's built just in the past 5 years or so, and honestly, there really aren't that many of those kind of homes in this particular area anyway. Not a lot of new construction at all. So you're gonna get into a lot of very established homes that are on larger lots. So being right on top of your neighbor is not something that you're usually going to see in a place like Nora. So notice that for sure. The other thing I like about Nora is that it's close to so much. So the borders of Nora, they're a little gray because again, it wasn't incorporated into a town ever, but there's a council that kind of oversees Nora. But generally it's up to 465 on the north side. And on the east side, you've got the White River. So once you cross the White River, then you're generally out of Nora, at least it's thought to be. If you go over to the west, you get to Township Line Road, and then to the south, it's generally 79th Street. Although Nora technically kind of follows the White River down to a neighborhood called Oxbow near Broad Ripple. And it's just where the White River is generally going south, and then it makes this U-turn and really goes back up towards the north. So those are the general borders for it. Again, it's not set in stone, but I do like the fact that it's very, very close to Keystone. And I'm actually gonna turn around here, head back this other way. Keystone at the crossing, Fashion Mall, which is just across the White River to the east of me. And then you have access to Keystone Parkway, which is over just to the east, Keystone Avenue, as it is right here in Indianapolis. You get a little north and it turns to Keystone Parkway. Over to the west, you've got US 31, which is Meridian Street. So you get to 465, either a Keystone or Meridian very easily. You can also get to downtown very easily from here, downtown Indianapolis that is. You could get into Carmel very easily from here, just north of 96th Street, and you're there. Follow US 31 up. Or you can come over here to Westfield Boulevard just to the east and take that north, and you can get right up into Carmel and 96th Street and north of that very easily. So you have all of that surrounding you, but then Broad Ripple is just to the south. So up here at 86th Street, the numbered streets in Indianapolis are very easy to keep track of. They always run, for the most part at least. There's a few other numbered streets, but the numbered streets generally run east-west on the north side. So if you're on 10th Street, 38th Street, if you're on 51st Street, or if you're on, of course, 86th Street up here just to the north, you know generally how far north you are. So 86th Street to the north of me, and you go down to 62nd Street, which is Broad Ripple Avenue, right in the heart of Broad Ripple Village. And that's just a little over 30 blocks from here. So I used to run along this trail a lot. I'd run down to Broad Ripple, run back. I would, again, take my mountain bike down to Broad Ripple, up back here to the apartment where it was, and just realized that I kind of fell into a spot that isn't necessarily perfect, because it's not going to be perfect for everybody. There's no doubt about that, but it was kind of perfect for me at the time. So it was something that just had about everything that was needed. Some cyclists here on the trail. Everything that I needed. It was in the city. It was still close enough to work for me up in Westfield. And it was also close enough to where a 20-something would really like, I think, in a lot of cases about Indianapolis, and that would be Broad Ripple. And a really short drive. You could go down College Avenue from here, and you're there in roughly 10 minutes, or you could go down Westfield Boulevard, right down to the south, and get into Broad Ripple that way as well. And that's a beautiful drive down College or down Westfield, especially Westfield. It's just extremely tree lined, very mature, some incredible homes through there, incredible properties, and modest. I mean, we're not talking about multi-million-dollar homes. We're talking about relatively expensive homes, I guess, but they are just established. They just have a really great feel of having been there for quite a while. So really just fell into this neighborhood, this area in the past accidentally. But even to this day, and this thing is being filmed in 2021, it's still a place that I like to go. In fact, my brokerage office is right up here, just off the Monon Trail. And I'm happy about that because every time I go into the office, I get to kind of relive this area. I've seen it definitely change over the years, and I always feel comfortable here just because I feel like this is a spot that has just about everything that I would have ever needed. But you know, it's not, of course, for everybody, and it's not going to have everything that everybody needs. There are lots of places that are similar to this across Indianapolis. Indianapolis is larger than what most people think, and this is just a spot that has all of those things on the north side. But you can get into some other parts of the city on completely opposite sides of the city and have a situation that might be similar to this. But this is a pretty special mix, having the Monon go through here, being connected to one of the cultural districts in Broad Ripple, and the Monon Trail doing that, and having that ability to use the Monon Trail to get to not just Broad Ripple, but also deeper into Indianapolis if you want to, and you can branch off of that and get into a lot of other neighborhoods. So that is one of the unique little features of it. So if you have questions at all about Indianapolis, north side of Indianapolis, Nora, where I am today, then make sure you reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.